Thank you all for coming out. Glad to see everybody. It's been a couple months since I've been here, so. Oh, okay. So just want to kick off with some announcements. We're gonna, first of all, SciPy is coming up this summer. It's in July, is that right? June? What? Yeah. And the call for papers is still out and isn't due until April 1st. Tuesday, right. So if you think you want to do a talk at SciPy, get on it. Second, just can we get a raise of hands for who's going to PyCon 2014 in Montreal? So everybody look around, figure out who you can meet up with that's from Austin, and maybe you guys can chat and do Austin birds of a feather. Okay, second or third, there's DevOps Days, which is coming up in May. That's going to conflict, incidentally, with Write the Docs in Portland. Josh, you mentioned this. Do you know more about it, or is it's just a thing that people might be interested in? Okay, cool. But I did check, and tickets are still open, and they're relatively cheap. And if this is, oh, Joe, you have?
What did you say?
What's that?
You said there was
the Write the Docs conference, which is put on by the Read the Docs folks.
Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah, that too.
There's a documentation conference?
What's the Arrested Development Cinco de Mayo? Cinco de Quattro, yeah. Anyway. Okay, PyTexas 2014. We're currently targeting late October for our dates. That's not nailed down until next week, actually. But there's still plenty of opportunity to practice some talks and get ready. If you're interested in doing a talk, AWPUG would be a great place to do it. AWPUG would also be.
Went from my kitchen to a lot of the roller paper celebrations back in
it's pretty responsive.
So normally it takes me 5 years to get to my car in my driveway in the suburbs.
All right. Which side of it? So you can.
I'm facing the courtyard. You have to like push and hold it
Okay. Go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming out. Glad to see everybody. It's been a couple months since I've been here, so. Oh, okay. So just want to kick off with some announcements. We're gonna, first of all, SciPy is coming up this summer. It's in July, is that right? June? What? Yeah. And the call for papers is still out and isn't due until April 1st. Tuesday, right. So if you think you want to do a talk at SciPy, get on it. Second, just can we get a raise of hands for who's going to PyCon 2014 in Montreal? So everybody look around, figure out who you can meet up with that's from Austin, and maybe you guys can chat and do Austin birds of a feather. Okay, second or third, there's DevOps Days, which is coming up in May. That's going to conflict, incidentally, with Write the Docs in Portland. Josh, you mentioned this. Do you know more about it, or is it's just a thing that people might be interested in? Okay, cool. But I did check, and tickets are still open, and they're relatively cheap. And if this is, oh, Joe, you have?
What did you say?
What's that?
You said there was
the Write the Docs conference, which is put on by the Read the Docs folks.
Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah, that too.
There's a documentation conference?
What's the Arrested Development Cinco de Mayo? Cinco de Quattro, yeah. Anyway. Okay, PyTexas 2014. We're currently targeting late October for our dates. That's not nailed down until next week, actually. But there's still plenty of opportunity to practice some talks and get ready. If you're interested in doing a talk, AWPUG would be a great place to do it. AWPUG would also be. And we're always open to new speakers. So if you're interested in that, please come talk to me or one of the other organizers. We'd be happy to put you on the list to ping for talks in the next few months. And then lastly, austinpython.org. The last post on austinpython.org was in August of 2012. So it needs love. And if anybody's interested in helping out, everybody's really busy, but we could use volunteers. And it's just a good place to keep like collective information about the Austin Python community and what's going on around here. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to As you know, probably MapMyFitness is sponsoring this month. I'm going to let Mike from MapMyFitness talk for like 2 minutes, and then we're going to kick it over to Dave and get on with packaging. So, thanks.
Thank you. So, as tonight's sponsor, in order to get the money for the tacos and the beer, they asked me to stand up and give a shameless plug for our recruiting team. So that's what I wanted to just fill you guys in on what's going on with MapMyFitness, Under Armour, the acquisition, and the growth that we're seeing. We've got a ton of opportunities. They've told us to hire roughly 50 engineers this year, so we are growing like mad here in Austin and in Denver. So if you're looking, if you're interested now, down the road, 6 months, 12 months, a year down the road, think about us. We've got a ton of great opportunities and having a lot of fun with it. And it's not just Python, anything on the back end. We've got full stack positions, front end, a lot of web dev, mobile, yeah, iOS and Android operating systems. So anything with mobile development as well. So if you're looking, you know somebody that's looking, I'm going to be sitting in the back. You're welcome to stop by and grab a business card. That's about the only involvement I'm going to have with this group if you're interested. So feel free to grab me, and I'd be happy to fill you in more on what's happening, the exciting stuff that's happening with Under Armour and what that means and what we're going to be doing in Austin as far as the growth goes, because we're going to see a lot of cool things, new facility that's going to be built out, and a lot of good times. So. Does that work?
Oh, I thought that was a sign that I need to stop drinking beer.
Do you want the water?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, just stick with the beer.
I've got beer. My standard issue joke when I'm giving a presentation is that my presentations are 2-drink minimum. Not for y'all, but for me. So I'm here to talk about packaging Python.
That's a roast.
I don't care. I am a senior developer on the core team at MapMyFitness. We are the team that sort of sits between product and ops. So product doesn't want to think about the servers, ops doesn't want to think about the code, so we think about both. And my first project when I came in my first big project was to kind of get our external dependencies in line, because we had what a number of organizations have, which is like a requirements file that specifies a whole bunch of external libraries, and not all of them were bog standard. In fact, a lot of them were heavily modified, and we were pointing at either old, we were pointing at branches on GitHub that were controlled by us or others. We were pointing at revisions and subversion on Google Code. We were pointing at Launchpad, because apparently Launchpad runs, that's Ubuntu's hosted Git solution, which I'd never heard of until I saw it in our requirements file. And I realized that we couldn't push new code unless all of those sites were up. So I fixed that, and while doing that, learned a whole bunch about Python packaging, and this is sort of the data dump of what I learned through that whole process. So the first thing that I learned is that Python packaging is a mess. And it's not necessarily so much a mess now as it is a mess that has accrued over many, many, many years. Apparently the first commit to distutils, which is the setup.py implementation in the standard library, was like September of 1998. So that was 4 months after Google was founded. And so back then, I guess you would have had to Alta Vista what other languages were doing to see if there was something that Python should be doing too.
Lycos still.
Or Lycos. I mean, I guess it depends on if your ISP would let you do shit. So there's, and Python Python has this push to always be backwards compatible, and when we kind of move, maybe not slowly, but certainly with deliberate purpose, which is why so many of us are still on Python 2. But it's getting better. So distutils was the old way, and then distribute came out, and then now we have setup tools, and setup tools is sort of generally seen as the way forward. And if you use setup tools, you're probably not going to get into too much trouble. And PyPI used to be down all the time, and now it's pretty stable and actually surprisingly fast. And now just things are working a lot better. So given that, how do you use it? Libraries use setup tools. There's a lot of stuff that has very high Google foo telling you to use distribute, telling you to use even distutils, but use setup tools. It is the best thing. It is helping out get us closer to things like namespace packages. It is improving all the time and isn't relying on like needing PEPs to get included, and then once PEP gets included, having like from future import or waiting until we're all using Python 3.5 or 3.8 or 4.2, whatever is actually going to be the future. Command line. Right now, easy install is the only thing you get out of the box, and the thing you should use it to do is install pip. Pip is also the thing of the future. Pip is where all new features that are improving the world are going to land first. So things like wheels, things like cryptographically verified packages from PyPI, those things are all going to be in pip before they land an easy install, if they ever land an easy install. And then the final kind of thing is virtual env. So I mean, I know this is pretty basic for a lot of people in here, but like when you get onto a new system, you should pretty much be typing easy install pip install virtual env, virtual env wrapper if you're you like not hating yourself, and then make virtual env and then doing all of your things in there, because virtual env lets you separate your installed packages into different virtual environments, which is extremely helpful when you do things like switch between feature branches on large code bases that have different requirements. It helps when you install something that turns out to completely F up your environment and you need to start from scratch. It will save your ass especially if you run OS X. The last thing you want to be doing is using the system site packages as the place you're doing development, because you're going to eventually screw something up and then your Xcode won't open, and that'll keep you from doing whatever it is you do with Xcode. The last thing that I'm plugging here that I'm going to talk about a lot more later is DevPy. And PyPI has solved a lot of its, or at least recently is a lot more stable, but DevPI lets you decouple from PyPI. So whether you're on a plane, if you can still install from your local DevPy instance, or from more of like an ops perspective, you can install DevPy in your environment and use that instead of PyPI as essentially a PyPI proxy and mirror. So without further ado, getting into the actual nitty-gritty of packaging, we get to talk about version numbers. So first, version numbers, and I was told that Travis was going to be not here.
I know where that's going.
Yeah. So Python has a fairly loose approach to version numbers. He's already laughing. And that lets people do whatever they want, essentially, and people do whatever they want, and it sucks. And it's definitely something where you can have very strong opinions about things that are not necessarily that important, which is why I have blue bike sheds are superior crossed out. And then there's this whole thing, semver, with semantic versioning, which you should all use, but I won't show up at your house in the middle of the night banging on your door if you don't. Basically, for those of you who don't know, semantic versioning is the idea that you kind of follow this major.minor.bugfix syntax where a bug fix is just changing code to make it work, but doesn't add any features. A minor update is adding new functionality, but does not break anything backwards. And then you do a major version bump whenever you do bump things. So this is, for instance, not what Django does, because if Django did this, we'd be on Django 37 at the very least. Nor is this, 0.1 to 0.2.0.3 and like just never actually hitting 1.0 because you don't want to have the pain of preserving backwards compatibility. And there are a number of Python libraries that do that. Do semantic versioning, release 1.0, drive things forward, release often. So that was my first version number slide. Here's number 2, pre-release versions. So, by the way, this version number scheme that I'm talking about is from PEP 368 or 386, I forget which. It is not the distutils strict version, nor is it the distutils loose version. It is what setup tool supports. It is the future. We should all do this. Pre-release versions are what makes it, are what you should have when it's not released. I know that's crazy, but all it is appending a letter after your bug fix or even your minor version that is before final in the alphabet, or pre, or preview, or RC. So you get this inequality where 1.2.1 comes after 1.2.1.A2, which comes after 1.2.A1. Or B's all come after A's, C's and RC's comes after B, just like in the alphabet. And it has this nice feature where pip install foo == 1.2.1 will not, yes?
This is not a trolling question at all.
Yes.
Did they keep the D is less than A for dev?
They did not.
So D is now greater than?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you repeat the question?
So there was behavior under distutils where if you had a pre-release tag that started with D, it would in fact be considered before A, B, and C, because you would want to have a pre-release tag of dev in your GitHub repo or Git repo, or God help you Subversion, and that would be lexicographically before your alphas and your betas and your RCs, your release candidates. This got rid of that. Yes, I think.
What does before final mean?
So literally this string here, this can be A, it can be ABC, it can be literally any string of alphanumeric characters, and as long as that string of numerical characters sorts lexicographically or sorts alphabetically before the word final, it is a pre-release tag.
So if it's G, then it's not a pre-release tag?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the next slide. But before that, install requires, which I haven't even talked about yet, but is like 3 slides from now. If there's a package that declares its dependency as, hey, I need package foo == 1.2.1, and you have 1.2.1 A2 installed, it says, hey, I need to install something else. And this is what we want, right? If somebody's using a pre-release version, that's not the release version, so we want them to upgrade. But there's the other side of final, which is post-release versions. So anything that is final or after, and it's important to note that hyphen is after final, is post-release, not pre-release. So this can get you in trouble if you release 1.2.1-A1 and you think that that's an alpha package. It is not. It is a post-release package, which means that if people install it and you subsequently release 1.2.1, what they have installed is after it from the perspective of pip. So don't do that. It does give you this nice inequality, which is, you can, if you started from 1.2.1, you can do 1.2.1 foo1, then foo2. But then if somebody wants to install 1.2.2, it is after all of them. And so it's all about setting up these inequalities. Yes?
Wouldn't that put RC after final?
It would, except that it's not. RC is a pre-release tag. It is specially exempt from these rules, as is preview, as is pre. Yes. I'm gonna take another drink for that one.
They kept all of those, but they got rid of dev?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Setup tools is the good one?
Setup tools is the good one. This is the future. There are PEPs that specify this. And this is an improvement, believe me. So let's talk about your first package. You've got some code, you want to distribute it internally, or you want to actually distribute it to the world. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna find your favorite Python package, like Django or Pyramid or what have you, and you're going to copy it setup.py. No, don't fucking do that. You can actually, I think it would be an interesting like graduate school type project to go onto PyPI and just scrape all of the setup.py files, and I'm sure you could build like an interesting genealogy to find out which package first did the shitty thing that is now infecting like 40% of Django packages or Python packages. So don't do that. Instead, go read the setup tools documentation. It's super simple, and like this is all you need to get your 0.1 package onto PyPI, or just distribute it internally as it might be. So this is the part where I realized that I haven't actually even talked about what a package is. So this table needs to do a drink. A package is basically just it's a single file distribution of a set of Python code. And it has a standard way of being kind of unpacked and adding your modules to site packages. The most commonly used one is sdist, which is essentially just a tarball of Python files. So that's what you get when you do this, and then I think this is the next level. Nope. I'll talk about that more later. Dependencies. So it's pretty common that the file or that the Python functionality you write relies on other libraries, and so you can specify that using a keyword argument to the setup function that lives inside of setup.py called install requires, and that takes a list. That takes a list of strings, and each string is a dependency declaration of the form, the name of the package equals or greater than or equal to a version string, 1.2.1 for instance. And then you can also do other crazy things like with commas say not equal to a particular package version or less than the next major version. And that's why I harped on semantic versioning, is because you can declare things as, hey, I want anything that's 1.3 or higher, but I don't want anything from the 2.0 package. And if package maintainers are good and if they introduce a backwards incompatible change, they push a 2.0, then all of those packages still work. And that's a good thing. Because if you don't do things like that, then you need to have crazy stuff like NPM, which has like crazy trees of stuff. Yeah, Travis is shaking his head at me. This is not to be confused with setup requires. Setup requires does what I would think install requires does, which is it defines packages that are needed in order to run the setup.py file. If you find yourself needing setup requires, reevaluate what you're doing with your package and do it differently. It's sort of my recommendation. Anyway, so let's talk about the package itself. Getting into the tarball. That's what this image is trying to convey. So what gets into the tarball when you run python setup.py sdist? If you used the find packages nice thing that setup tools provides, you get all of the .py files that are in the packages that are found automatically. Then you use the logically named include package data, and it includes all of the non-Python files that are in those packages, as long as they're checked into source control, where source control is defined as CVS or SVN. Once again, this is the improvement over what was before. So what you'll find yourself doing instead is defining a manifest.in file, and manifest.in is a template file that is then interpreted against your file system to generate a manifest file, and the manifest file is used as an argument to the step that actually builds the tarball. So if you ever see a manifest file and you think, oh, I'll just add a file to it, don't do that. So once you've done this, you might think, sweet, now that all of the things that I need in site packages are in the tarball, I'm done. And if you think that, you're going to bring down production, because I did that at Map My Fitness. And to be fair, I only brought down the admin site, but that was almost worse, because then the actual clients who were affected were like over there, and they could throw things at me. And instead, most of the things hit Marty, which is awesome. So getting into site packages. It worked with -E and Crash's production. See, this is where I should have talked about -E much earlier, but I'm not going to. So package data is another keyword argument to setup.py, and it defines a dictionary that maps Python packages to file system glob patterns. And anything that matches one of the glob patterns that belongs to a package, to your package, or I think also a package above you, gets included where it is, which works pretty well.
Is that supposed to be package name or package data?
Okay, so package data is the name of the keyword argument, but the key inside of the dictionary is the name of the package.
Okay, so that should be
So like
foobar.
Yes, foobar or hello world or whatever, debug toolbar. So I'm actually going to pause and talk a little bit more about this first bullet point. So editable installs are the worst thing ever, and if you don't use them, you're going to hate yourself even more when you're developing stuff. When you're developing installable packages. Because if you use pip install -e dot from the command line at the root of the package you're developing, what that will do is create this symlink from your site packages to your current directory set up the way that Python setup.py tells it to. So it'll be named properly. And this is awesome because it lets you live edit code inside of site packages, essentially. And so as you're making changes, you'll see them reflected in your run server or whatever immediately. And that's super helpful. But the problem is you think, oh, sweet, it worked in my local environment. And so you sdist it up, you send it out, and then you find out that the file didn't get included that you had just added because it didn't match one of the glob patterns. So you really, really, really need to run tests by doing things like Python setup.py sdist install, which will actually generate the entire tarball, and then we'll install that tarball into your local machine. And really, if you do that, you're still going to probably fuck things up because this line doesn't always play well with the -E. If you've already installed something editable and then you install it through that, you can still fuck yourself up. So it all sucks. This is still better than it was. Yes?
Are you going to talk about talks?
I'm not going to talk about talks.
Okay. Well, talks does sdist install, and so if it runs in talks, then you'll have a pretty good idea that your setup.py actually works.
Use talks.
Write tests.
Right. Well, yes, write tests. Come on. Yes.
Is there a way you can get to uninstall an editable package?
Yes. You say pip uninstall, I think the name of the package, but I always do pip uninstall dot from inside the package that I installed editably. I've seen really shitty things happen. Like, I've seen things, man. The other place that I learned a lot of this stuff was through a CMS called Armstrong that tried to do things like namespace packaging using distutils and distribute primitives. And it was bad because you'd get into like the situation where like you'd have a nested editable install, and I've had situations where I've had to pip uninstall, run the same pip uninstall multiple times, and I would get different output each time, and I wouldn't stop until it started like giving me the error message saying there's nothing installed. But you shouldn't have to run pip uninstall the same thing multiple times. Like that just doesn't make any sense, but I've seen it happen. So -E is indispensable because it's a giant pain in the ass not to use it, and it is the worst thing ever because it's going to fuck you up at some point. I feel like there's some joke or metaphor here, maybe relationships, maybe drug use, I don't know. But yeah. So, all right, we've built a tarball. Now let's release it. This is the part that actually is pretty freaking awesome. PyPI, because PyPI is a different Python interpreter because we hate ourselves as a community. PyPI has this incredibly low bar for putting something up and letting the world use it. I didn't actually run this code because why would I run code? You pretty much just run python setup.py register, and it goes and talks to PyPI and says, hey, I want this, and it'll prompt you for credentials. And then you own that name. And then you run python setup.py sdist upload, and someone on the other side of the world can just say pip install the name you just registered, and it will pull files down and install them. And I think that's amazing, even though it's not that amazing. But for how easy this part is so easy compared to everything else that it's like a crazy breath of fresh air. And just like I sometimes say, hey, y'all should come up here and give talks because it's actually way easier than you think. It's the same thing with releasing code. Like, if you have code that works that you think somebody else might want to use, like the hardest part is pretty much all the shit I just said. I was gonna say the hardest part is like coming up with a unique name, but really the hardest part is all the setup.py bullshit I just talked about. But once you get to the point where you're generating an sdist, working with PyPI is pretty easy. But you want to go beyond PyPI because if you work in any capacity on a large Python application, you don't want to have dependencies like I was talking about at MyFitness. Because the last thing you want to do is not be able to solve a production issue because Ubuntu didn't keep Launchpad up, or somebody decided to delete the code.google.com SVN repo that was migrated off of 3 years ago. So that's where DevPy comes in. Actually, before you even get to DevPy, if all you wanted to do was just pull down the third-party code and just bundle it back up into an sdist tarball and put that tarball on S3 or even on your own local file system, whatever you feel is comfortable is not going to be down, then, or hell, check it into your repo. I mean, don't do that, but that's a thing you could do. And then just install from that file path. And you have instantly improved your deploy process by decoupling it from these third-party providers that really don't owe you anything. Even if you're giving them money, I mean, PyPI, it's going to go down again, I promise you. So DevPI lets you run your own PyPI mirror, and our ops guys are very, very, very happy now compared to where they were. And the other thing that's awesome is this little thing down at the bottom, which is that running your own PyPI lets you patch stuff. So all those post-release tags that I was talking about earlier, this is one of the most powerful things you can do with it. So I wrote this little, really small package called MMF Release Tools that's just for internal use at MyFitness that automatically creates a version number that is a post-release tag that is also based off of the timestamp. And so when we do bad things like patch Django, and we we just released to our own dev PI, and it's 1.6.3-mmf- timestamp, and that makes it so that we always know that a pip install with the new version is going to do the uninstall of the previous version, which is definitely not a guarantee you get with editable installs. And if it's the same version, it runs really, really quickly. So that's actually, I'm gonna crap on editable installs again, which is that if you have an editable install in your requirements file, every single time that is pip install -ard, it's going to go and re-download the code base. And so if you're doing something really terrible, like installing from an SVN or a Git URL of a large repo, like say Django, it's going to download multiple megabytes of source code from GitHub, and that is going to be really, really shitty. And inevitably, that process is going to fail in the middle of the night when ops is screaming at you because people are screaming at them. So get on DevPy and don't use editable installs in your requirements files. So I think my second to last slide is wheels. Because when I announced that this is the talk I was going to give, everyone on the organizers list said, oh, yes, give a Python packaging talk because I want to learn about wheels. So apparently eggs sucked, so we reinvented the wheel by creating a new binary distribution called wheels. That's what I know about wheels.
Django 161 is released that way.
Django 161 is released that way. I just learned something about wheels. No, in all seriousness, so eggs were this essentially non-cross-platform way of just doing binary distributions. And if you've ever installed SciPy, or NumPy, not SciPy, or both, or PIL, this is AWPUG, not APUG, so I'm sure you've all tried to figure out why it is that your PIL can't make JPEGs, and it's because you didn't have something in the right place and you just want to fucking die. Wheels can improve that somewhat, and our ops guys discovered wheels and figured out how to like rebundle NumPy and PIL, and it dramatically improved our time to spin up an entirely new environment. So wheels are definitely something. Yes.
Did you just imply that you guys made NumPy pip install?
Am I allowed to talk about that?
I think
Why not?
Yeah, we installed NumPy from pip, right?
Yeah, it installs in like 2 seconds when it's available.
Yeah.
Is there a Nobel Prize for pip?
I don't know. That wouldn't go to me. That would go to what? Stu, I guess. Yeah. He's on vacation, and the site has gone down because of it.
Yeah.
We'll take it over.
Yeah.
It's great, but the tricky thing about wheels is because you're using them to install basically compile binaries. Often you have to have a separate wheel for each different OS that you want to install. So we have developers that have VMs that have different CentOS versions depending on when they came on board. So we have 3 different NumPy wheels to test for each of those.
Marty, we're trying to hire people. Don't tell them about it.
We're getting
I'm only telling about shit that used to be broken that we fixed now. So wheels are something that I'm sure will make your ops guys happy, but as a package maintainer, they're probably a giant pain in the ass. And if you want the community to get better, you could probably maybe build some tools or provide some services that made wheels easier.
or provided Anaconda.
Or Anaconda, because that's a thing, I guess. That's a different kind of snake. That Continuum, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, company here in town.
That you can do Conda install NumPy, SciPy, Ruby as of last night.
Do a lightning talk on it.
Yes. Next one. Actually, how am I doing on time? I started a timer. I didn't start a timer. So, questions. I said "come at me, bro" here, and that was incorrect. I know I've done terrible things like read some of the distribute and distutil source code. I've read a lot of documentation, but Python packaging is in the state that it's in because no one really wants to think about it, right? Like, as long as it works, and it works for you, and it works for ops, like, it's done. But if you, with a little bit of effort, you can get a lot better than, you know, pulling things into the source tree, for instance. Any questions?
So, you know, we've all heard about setup tools a lot, and we just talked about it at the beginning, like, you should definitely be using setup tools, not any of the other things. What is setup tools? I know it's a library, but what does it actually do?
Okay, so backing up a second, setup.py is a special file, and it is the entry point for doing all of the package things. And Python doesn't actually care what's in the setup.py file. It really only cares that it accepts the arguments that pip or whoever wants to send into it. And so distutils was the first implementation of a function called setup that traditionally is basically the only thing that lives in that file. And then distribute came along and said, we have a better fucking setup method than distutils, and distutils is slow because it's part of the standard library. And so what that means is you want to make a change to it, you got to get a pep accepted, and then you have to wait until the next versions of Python. And even that doesn't help you because who the hell knows what version of Python somebody's running. So, you know, you wrote your package so that it uses things that are only available in 2.6.3 and afterwards, and great, now you just can't, you explode 2.6.2. That's not a great experience, which is why distribute came along. And actually, I think there's another one that we maybe.
It was originally setup tools, then it was distutils, then it was distribute.
That's right.
Setup tools again.
Yes.
There's a distribute too.
And then there's distribute too. So
which nobody uses.
Yes.
So you get merged back into setup tools?
Yes.
Distribute is now, yeah, it's like just a fork on their Git repo. Or not a fork, a branch. So now setup tools is the library that is pip installable, maybe even easy install, but don't use easy install unless you need to install an egg. But if you need to install an egg, something has gone terribly, terribly wrong. Even though there are many people, or there are some people who are smarter than me, some people who are much, much smarter than me in the Python community, who think that wheels and essentially all of this is a terrible idea and we should all just go back to easy install and egg. And it's not that they're wrong, it's just that it's not going to happen. So setup tools is, at its heart, a library that implements that setup function that lives in setup.py. And one thing that's actually kind of cool about it, and I don't fully understand exactly how it's doing it, but setup tools has a bootstrap file that's like 12K that you can install. Like you just put easy underscore setup.py at the same level as your setup.py, and you import setup from there. And my vague understanding is that it does like voodoo black magic and says, hey, if setup tools is here, use setup tools. And if setup tools isn't here, just like get it and use it and then be done. And it sounds like something that I don't want going to production. Like, I don't want my production servers like downloading and executing setup code from who the hell knows where, but it's kind of cool. That was a diversion. Did I answer the question?
Cool. Yes.
Yes.
So I just had a similar question. So I know, like, one of probably the most important thing that setup tools is doing is compiling your Python code to PYCs or PYOs,
Yes.
and putting them in the site packages.
Yes.
But I was originally doing that, like I was making like system packages for Arch Linux that was installing Python code, and I was just calling Python -m compile all, and just copying those over manually to the site packages, and it was really fast. And then I decided that I want to be more standard, so I switched to setup tools, and it took like 2 or 3 times longer. So do you have any idea like why it's taking so much longer?
No. I mean, I have vague ideas, but I don't, like, I mean, I feel like the Python compile all command is surely doing something very, very, very fast, whereas setup tools is doing, like, if you call find packages, then it's doing crazy things just like walking the source tree and identifying packages and like building lists, and I'm sure using all these rules, and it's doing it all in interpreted code because, frankly, it's not concerning to the developers of setup tools if it takes 2 seconds longer to install something. Or maybe it does worry them, but not nearly as much as, you know, this weird edge case where an old package just doesn't install properly. But what you sort of just described is actually something I meant to talk a little bit about, which is all of this is happening in an environment that is somewhat at odds with kind of the way that sysadmins generally want to do things, right? Like, sysadmins don't like the idea of having kind of a package manager that's separate from, I'm painting sysadmins with a very broad brush, but like, if you're worried about stability, you want things pulling from like RPM or, you know, apt-get, like things where other really smart people have run tests and made sure things that work that work together and don't explode. And then, you know, the Python product guys come along and say, well, fuck it, this was released to PyPI or PyPI yesterday and it solves my problem locally, so let's fucking push to prod. Which is sort of the reverse of this slide, right? Like, you can't really trust things on PyPI because maybe I just got drunk last night and decided to push a new version. Like, who knows? Like, and in fact, something that I haven't talked at all about is that PyPI kind of sucks compared to a lot of the stuff that happens in like apps or RPM or Yum. Yum may be RPM. I haven't done like Linux. Huh?
Just a wrapper. Right?
Just a wrapper, yeah. But all of those, like, you know, ops tools care deeply about security and making sure that like whoever uploads something's authorized to upload it and that it really is them and there's cryptographic signing and everything that's pulled down over the wire is encrypted end to end, and like all of these really nice strong guarantees so that your system isn't compromised. And pip just goes over HTTP and
Not anymore.
not anymore.
Which will cause you problems.
Which will cause problems.
Yeah.
1.5, if you're actually running the latest, will do. You have to add special flags to allow external. Something that's not controlled by PyPI, you have to allow untrusted if it's not encrypted.
Right. So things are getting better, but just the same extent, things are getting harder for this side, right? So it may already be the case. It certainly will be the case soon that you know that when you download Django 161, that like James Bennett blessed it with Unicorn P, and like good, because I don't want to be using unblessed Django. But we're not there yet. We have a long way to go. So yeah, release packages, because it's pretty easy. Oh yeah,
I've already asked.
you have.
So I work in Plum almost exclusively, so my role is defined by build out. I was curious.
So you're the one. I was like trying to figure out if I needed to talk about build out because like I'd heard that it existed. I was like, what the fuck is build out?
Okay. So well, I guess I was looking for your wisdom on build out. And
I don't know. My understanding of build out is that like it solved a lot of these like other problems that are problems, but that it was sort of like just different and not mainstream. Not mainstream. No.
yeah.
Did everyone hear the question? Okay. You had some stuff, Travis?
I used it both prior to virtual and wrapper being
Okay.
accepted. When those came up, a whole bunch of people migrated from build out over to just using virtual and kit.
Okay. Yeah. Does build out? I can't remember. Obviously, it uses setup tools on the backend, but does it also use pip to install things, or can you choose?
I don't think so.
Okay. Because I know you can,
Or
get.
let me rephrase it. You couldn't, like, 3.5 years ago when I quit using it.
Okay.
But that was like at the genesis. I don't think that was even a 1.0.
Okay. Because can you set up Django projects in Buildout? Okay.
Jacob Kaplan Moss actually has a couple blog posts about it.
Okay.
He was one of the big proponents of it early on.
Right. Because I know.
But now he works for Heroku, and Heroku's all pip all the time.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure you could build out like a different build pack, but I mean, that's, I feel like, I try to do a good job of saying this is the direction that the Python world is moving at the moment. And who knows, I mean, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, like distribute was the future. And if you were using anything but distribute, you were like holding the community back. And now that's all completely different. And it's sort of unfortunate for us as a community that something as fundamental as how do I install another person's code is like in flux, and is in flux this way. And that, I mean, you would think, hey, sort of my slide about copying somebody else's setup.py, that should be the right thing, right? Like we should be looking at the Djangos and the Python requests and the SciPy and NumPys of the world to say, all right, this is how it should be done. And instead what you find are setup.py files that like only get edited to change the version number and are just done the way they've always been done because we don't want to break things, but then, you know, we don't get things like namespace packages, which we should fucking have. And we can have, as long as we use setup tools. That was my rant. That was one of my rants.
Can you tell me what I was supposed to do with the setup.cfg?
Git blame it. And
Python 3.
oh, Python 3?
There's something that you can use in Python 2 to make it work, but it's just the metadata, and because Python setup.py is boilerplate.
Right.
And the CFG is just the things that change.
Yes.
The package name, the description, the version number.
Yes.
At some point
it's a good idea. It's a good idea, and hopefully we'll get there.
When everyone is on Python 3.3.
When everyone's on Python 3.3.
3.4 is out now.
3.4. 3.4, yes. I'm not going to say the thing I want to say. Because you should all come and apply for jobs at MapMyFitness because it's awesome. And on Python 2.6. Oh. But there's a ticket to fix it.
We'll have to when we go to Django 1.7.
Yeah, there's a ticket, Core 700, that gets us on Django 1.7 and Python 2.7. It's gonna happen. And Marty will get another 1-up sticker.
2.6 to 2.7 is really easy.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
But going to 3 is really hard though.
No, going to 3 is super hard, but I mean, going from 2.6 to 2.7 is super easy as long as you don't have like, how many requests per day are we doing? Like, I want to say like 7 or 8 million?
More than that, 50 million.
Is it 50 million?
Yeah.
I guess it's what, 1.8 million? No, God, actually it was like 2.4 million on Route Thumbnail yesterday. Yeah, so I'm gonna plug MapMyFitness again because I love it. I'm having a super fun time, and being on the core team is sort of fun. My joke is that we are like Australian Starks because summer is coming. Because people run and bike and do outside stuff in the summer, and based off of our numbers, summer started like, what, 2 weeks ago? Because that was when our traffic surpassed our traffic peaks from last summer. So our like challenges are big and fun, and when something's broken in production for 2 seconds, you see like 500 spikes that are terrifying, and I don't know, it gets me excited in the morning. So that's what I've got. Any final questions, or should we go drink somewhere? Or is anything open? Isn't it like relays?
Oh, it's open. You just have to. Never mind. There was a joke there.
Okay.
We've got time, but is anybody interested in questions?
Travis, do you want to do the lightning talk on whatever it was you were talking about?
Let's take 10 minutes, and if you're interested, let us know, and we'll.
Yes, great idea.
Otherwise, we'll say get out of here.
Yes.